Welcome to part 3 of the Leading Sheep webinar series featuring Jason Wishart from the Invasive Animals CRC. This episode looks at studies into population genetics and PIGOUT.
So the genetic studies. We wanted to determine the effect of aerial shooting on population genetics of feral pigs. So selected a management area that was 4,000 square metres, which this was undertaken in Queensland actually. And we wanted to determine that population size of feral pigs out there, the genetic population size I should say, and whether there are any boundaries, so what limits pigs from dispersing throughout the landscape. But we also collected samples over 500,000 square kilometres to determine whether those population boundaries exceeded the 4,000 square metre mark. So what we found were feral pig populations were able to return to pre-control levels after 1 year. So that was the aerial, we did an aerial shooting program within that 4,000 square metre area, and what we found were that they came back to that initial population. We also found that the population was genetically identical to those removed, so we actually weren't targeting the whole population, and as soon as you moved out that chunk, the rest move in, and as I said, the same genetic population reinvaded the area. And it was found that migration was typically along waterways, which has been common and has been noted in many other studies. So that there sort of shows that the importance of coordinating over a massive area if you can, because reinvasion is going to occur, and the smaller the area, the quicker that happens. And what you hope to do is target a full genetic population. That means there won't be reinvasion. So genetics are becoming used more and more in wildlife research these days because the price is coming down a little bit, and it can be applied to situations like this. And there's a bit of a map of the area that was used in the study, and the black part there is where the actual property was that received aerial shooting, and you can see that little boundary around it is the actual identified size of the population, and that little square or that little area in the middle is just a small component of that. So the development of PIGOUT. The idea of this was to develop a product that was target-specific, user-friendly, that could be purchased by people wherever they're dealing with feral pig problems. The project commenced during 2004. Several prototypes were created, and of those, they were all tested in a range of different settings, pen and paddock trials, and of those we found that the omnivorous sausage bait was the favourite of the lot. So a series of target specificity trials were also undertaken to determine, so these were using just purely the bait without the poison in it, just to find out what other animals were interested in this bait. And it was actually found using a series of remote cameras and things that these were quite target specific to feral pigs. There are a few omnivores that have sampled this bait, but the good thing about it is it contains, the live bait contains the toxic core, which you can see there in the picture, just here. So that's where the 1080 is. So if you get any animals come along, they can sample, so things like possums and that, but they won't actually reach that core, whereas pigs often do. So once we identified the right bait and that it was target specific, they had to implement a series of large-scale field trials in a number of different habitats, which you can see over here where the trials were undertaken, to determine its field efficacy. So to achieve that, we had to reduce pig numbers by 75%, or the population by 75%. So initially there was a free feeding stage where all bait stations were monitored using cameras, and there was a whole range of other techniques used as well for monitoring, including satellite tracking collars, etc. And then after about a week of free feeding, we got an idea of feral pig numbers, and then after that, the poisoning was undertaken, and then we could determine the % reduction. And it was quite successful, this process, and the product as a result was launched during 2008, which was Australia's first feral pig or manufactured feral pig bait.